2, 1.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Unknown Destination, the podcast where we don't know where we're going and we don't even know where we're starting. My name's Justin. That's Andrew. Both of us, background in travel. Both have worked in corporate travel. And yeah, that's about it. So, Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Just trying to finish some house projects up before the big cold comes. How about yourself?
Man, I don't know when the big cold's going to come here, but it feels like it could be next week or it could be a month from now. But I haven't been doing much of anything. My second kid actually is going back to in-person learning in 2 weeks. So preparing to actually have the house to myself, which has never happened in my adult life. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's all I've had is alone time since quarantine has started, except for the days where I have my daughter. But excited to have my garage back to myself. Like I've had just endless projects going, but it'll be nice to park inside when it gets a little bit chillier.
That is a huge advantage. I wish I had a garage. Luckily, I at least have like a deck that's over my car, so I don't have to worry about like scraping snow off of it. But like if the locks freeze or something, I still got to deal with that. So,
Yeah, blessed. Hashtag.
Okay. So yeah, I don't really know what we're going to be talking about today. There really isn't that much going on as far as surrounding the travel industry. Still not a lot of people traveling. I know, as I mentioned on the last episode, my wife works at a hotel. They had kind of picked back up with like teams and stuff staying in the hotel, but since then that's died off. And I think we're kind of getting to the winter season where people just don't travel that much in general anyway.
Yeah, I've been finding the same thing here. It looks like some of the European countries have actually kind of doubled down on their travel restrictions over the past week or two. I want to say just off the top of my head, I know there were 3 countries, one of them being France, and then 2 surrounding countries that have implemented coronavirus, not quarantines, but what do you call them? Like a coronavirus curfew is what they're calling it. Because they're back to numbers that they were at the very beginning. So basically showing that it's just coming back again. And so U.S. probably should be prepared for even worse.
Yeah, and this wasn't necessarily unexpected at all. Everybody kind of expected a second wave during flu season, and we're definitely seeing that. As far as restrictions, one of the strictest that I've seen is actually one of the few countries that you could still travel to as an American citizen for a long time, and that's Ireland. And they've actually restricted even the people that live there. They cannot travel more than 3 miles from their home right now.
Yeah, I think that is something that's similar with the French mandates that they put in place here the past couple weeks.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing, just for everybody, stay safe. Obviously, right now, I know a lot of people have that desire to travel, especially when prices are low, but it's going to be a lot harder as we get into this winter season with more cases coming up in different countries. It's going to be a lot harder to go places, and you're going to see a lot more of those 14-day quarantines if they don't have those tests available for you to get that negative test. And honestly, 14 days, that's longer than most people have in vacation time. So I guess if you're unemployed, maybe you can go, which is great, except for if you're unemployed, you probably also don't have the money to go. So you catch 22.
Yeah, and actually I was just reading here, globally, they reported coronavirus cases surpassed 40 million over the weekend. And this was just a day ago that this was updated. So 1 million deaths and 28 million recoveries. In the U.S. alone now has reported over 8 million cases. So we're looking at over 220,000 deaths from this as of right now. And keep in mind that the U.S. never really had this under control like a lot of these other European countries or just the rest of the world. A lot of these countries thought that they had eradicated it, and now they're back to record-breaking numbers again. So yeah, like Justin was saying, just make sure you're taking care of yourself and using the standard precautions that everybody should have been doing for a long time now.
Yeah, and I think that's about all we're going to have to say about that. Obviously, it's a touchy subject. A lot of people in America have made it a political issue, and in our situation, I think the main thing is it's going to be hard to travel right now, and it may not be the best time to travel. So that's about it on that. But related to that, last time we talked a little bit about Delta reporting their quarterly losses, and since then, United actually came out. I think it was like the day after we recorded that podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found interesting about that, and I actually said this to Andrew already, was that their loss reported was only $1.8 billion, but it was still almost the exact same percentage in loss of business as Delta. So a lot of people don't know which of those major carriers are really the biggest in the game here in the U.S. And I think it's pretty obvious at this point that Delta, 4 times the size of United, and, you know, in my opinion, handling things better despite being the bigger company.
Yeah, and I was just checking to see if American had posted anything, and I haven't seen American Airlines post anything about their quarterly losses yet, because we know it's going to be a loss. We just don't know how much in comparison to the other major airlines. I'm just looking at the most recent update that I'm seeing here from American. It says in the second quarter they posted a 2.1 billion net loss. So
Ouch.
it's if you think about it, their airlines could potentially be losing roughly $8 billion plus just this past year.
That's insane. And, you know, obviously it sucks for these major corporations, but where it really hurts is the people that have lost their jobs because of it. The furloughed flight attendants and pilots, who you've got to consider, a lot of these pilots that are first officers are making, you know, $100,000 a year, going to $0 or what their state's maximum unemployment is. And a lot of states, if their unemployment numbers are dropping below a certain point, are running out of some of their extended benefit programs. So you're talking about a time when now really the people in this industry are getting hurt the worst that they have been at this point, with those things running out.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking too, a lot of people that are trying to travel within the states, because they think that it's going to be, well, it is going to be easier, obviously, than traveling internationally, need to keep in mind that a lot of states have different regulations themselves. So one of the big ones, obviously, Hawaii is not allowing people. You're having to do the testing and possibly quarantining. It looks like that was just updated as well. That there's a lot of Hawaii testing taking place right now. If you're coming from certain locations in the U.S. So just once again, keep that in mind if you're trying to travel somewhere by air. Of course, if you're going to road trip, that's going to be pretty easy to do still. I haven't heard of anything, any states kind of locking down their own state borders. Have you?
Actually, yes. Now, this was actually back in July, so I am not 100% sure if it is still in order right now. But it relates to people coming from specific areas, and it actually has to do with somewhere I visit a lot and somewhere right between us, and that's Chicago. On July 28th, the mayor of Chicago decided that anybody that was coming from St. Louis, where I'm at, which is a COVID hotspot, would have to do a 14-day quarantine as soon as they came into the area. It doesn't matter if you're coming in by car, by rail, by air, you're supposed to travel or quarantine for 14 days. Now, granted, is that enforceable? Absolutely not. I mean, there's no way they're going to know, but there are a lot of different cities that are actually imposing these different restrictions on people that are coming from areas that are considered hotspots. So, you know, it's great to know the state requirements, but even further, if you're going into a major city, you need to make sure that that's somewhere you want to be. And if it's a city that is a hotspot, maybe somewhere you want to avoid as well.
Yeah, and just to kind of touch on that further, there's I should have said that I haven't heard anything recently, just because I do know that a lot of places were restricting Floridian travel. Because Florida has been kind of one of those states that's just been a hot spot, like the Florida, Georgia, kind of down in that area has been a hot spot since forever. So they're kind of, I haven't heard any, like I said, I haven't heard anything recently about any kind of quarantining if you're flying from those locations. I know that they stopped travel for just a little bit during the peak, but I haven't heard anything since then.
Yeah, it looks like as of right now, technically there's still an order in place in Chicago for people coming from Missouri, Wisconsin, Nebraska, or North Dakota. Now, you got to think Chicago, you're going to have a lot of people coming from Missouri and Wisconsin going into Chicago. So, again, there's no way that they're going to be able to enforce that, just because logistically there's no possible way for you to know if somebody's driving into the city or not. But
yeah, exactly.
but
Actually, I did just. Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off here.
Oh, no, no, go ahead.
I did just something just popped up here that I guess kind of good news in the travel world that kind of is a little bit uplifting here. Singapore Airlines starting service to New York in November. So they're
Oh,
going to be starting, let's see, between Singapore and JFK next month. So they're
okay.
going to be operating 3 weekly flights on their Airbus A350 -900 aircraft. Um, and let's see, it looks like so this is restarting. They had 6 routes to the U.S. Before the pandemic,
Yeah.
and this so far they've only resumed service to Los Angeles. So this is pretty big news that they're going to be resuming service to JFK, because this may
Huge.
be a sign that some of the other international carriers may start resuming their service as well, that they had cut routes out internationally. So that's actually enormous. This just hit less than 20 minutes ago.
Wow. Yeah, I hadn't heard that yet. So that's crazy, and that is a huge deal. I know the A350, you're talking about a jet that holds just over 300 passengers, so that's a significant amount of passengers to be able to get on an aircraft even if they aren't operating at full capacity. That's going to make a huge difference, and that's going to make a big difference in business travel. The only thing is, even though that is a very common route in the corporate travel world, I don't know how many corporations you're going to see actually utilizing it right now. So I'll be very curious to see how much that flight actually gets used once it's put back
Actually,
into service.
it's funny that you say that because yeah, there's a little cliff note that says that the route is also they're anticipating to use it for heavy cargo demand in the pharmaceutical.
Okay.
So basically, it sounds like what their plan is they're going to be flying it most likely a quarter to half full passengers, and they're going to up the rest of their weight. Hit their weight limits by doing these pharmaceutical e-commerce technology industries that are located in New York that need to get their stuff to and from Asia. So
That makes a lot of sense, and I can't help but wonder if the timing of that kind of coincides with Pfizer saying they may be able to get approval for a vaccine come
yeah,
mid-November.
yeah,
So,
it's yeah. You wonder what's going on behind the scenes, because that's anytime you see a notification
yeah,
like that where you've got they're specifically saying they're going to be starting a passenger routing, but with a focus on pharmaceutical transportation. You wonder what kind of meetings are going behind closed doors that, hey,
yeah,
maybe they did get approval for some kind of virus vaccine or even testing. So,
yeah. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. And that does seem like an aircraft that would be able to handle quite a bit of that vaccine on board. And the timing, I mean, that can't be coincidental with Pfizer
no.
making the announcement that they think they'll have approval mid-November. That's got to be related somehow.
Yep, and in relation to that, United is going to be opening routes back up as well. So we'll see how long that lasts. I know that we
Yeah.
both have our skepticism when it comes to United, but I like to give them benefit of the doubt since they're going to be expanding their service back to Mexico, the Caribbean, Latin America, with 8 new routes and expanded services on 19 other routes. So
Okay.
we'll see what that means yet. The new service is including. Let's see, it says 5 new routes starting in December. LA to San Jose, Costa Rica, and San Pedro, Honduras. And then between Denver and both Belize City, San Jose, Costa Rica. And then they've got a couple other ones here that are just basically restarting services that they used to into Mexico. So just another thing to keep an eye on, because these are all they're relaunching these routes kind of at what people are thinking or would think that this might be another virus spike kind of time of year.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see if this will bring some people back to work and get people traveling again, especially in the winter months, trying to get to those Mexican beaches.
Yeah.
People, it might be pretty popular as long as they can get out and in safely without having to do any of the quarantining.
And actually, speaking of some of those Mexican countries and Caribbean areas and things, I've kind of been keeping up with travel in Mexico, and it's just because a YouTube channel that I watch, they happen to be very deeply associated. Like, they live in Mexico, so they've been going to a lot of the resorts and stuff, seeing what kind of precautions they've been taking. And a lot of these resorts have been doing whatever they can to get people back in, because let's be honest, they're not going to survive if they don't have the money coming in. And uh, they need the tourism. So, if you're somebody that's interested in traveling to Mexico, I've never been myself, so I'm not going to be your best bet, but just as a recommendation, there's a YouTube channel called Tangerine Travels. It's a couple that lives down there and goes and visits all the different states there, and they have a lot of great information on what different resorts are doing during COVID-19 to make it safe to travel there.
Yeah, I personally have not been to Mexico myself either. I've never found the appeal of a beach. I'd rather try to go on the craziest, dangerous trip possible. So, and that, but that doesn't include getting mugged or robbed or anything. So I usually more of a nature buff myself. I'd rather go somewhere that has historical significance. We've got lots on the agenda once I can actually start traveling again safely. But until then, we'll just have to keep dreaming.
Well, and I think that brings up another great point of, we're talking about all the things you probably shouldn't be doing right now and places you shouldn't be traveling. But let's talk about the things you can do. We're both Midwestern boys. So camping and RVing and doing things that involve nature, this is a great time to do that. Obviously, you're going to be able to social distance if you're going to places that are more, park-like or campgrounds and things like that. And honestly, especially in the Midwest in the fall, it's the best time to go see the fall colors. So if you're itching to travel, it's a great time to take that road trip and do those camping trips.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to bring that up here that in Michigan, depending on where you're at, the trees are really changing colors here. I know there's a huge draw in northern Michigan. Lots of different places that you can just drive through and walk through to see all the fall colors. So there's definitely a lot to do. And I would say Google is probably, I've found so many just random spots that I would have never found before just by bored one day searching, and I'm like, I got a couple days off coming up. Let's see what we can do. And I just grab my daughter and, head up north or down south, just depending on what I find. And once again, if there's somewhere that maybe you live somewhere and you're having a hard time finding something, just throw us a question or comment, and can always look into it for you for the next episode.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even though between the two of us, we haven't been everywhere, we know a lot of people that have been a lot of places. We know a lot of people in the industry. So we're happy to answer what we can, and we're happy to get those answers for you. The other thing is, if you have questions more specific to like hotels or car rentals or things like that, we both may have different opinions, but we're happy to help out with that and kind of give you our ideas on that, because I think we definitely have them. And as you can tell by our opinion united, it's not just the airline that we have opinions of. We have opinions on hotel brands and car rentals too. And honestly, I think being in travel, they're probably going to be pretty similar between me and Andrew, just because the way they work with travel agencies says a lot about the way they're going to treat their customers too.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot of those. Maybe every once in a while you'll have a travel agent that'll tell you, this, it might behoove you to work with the hotel or car company on your own. And that's mostly because there are certain brands that are known for hating travel agencies. They see us, they see us as the I guess the middleman that doesn't need to exist. But that's it. Like I said, there's definitely the good and the bad that come with it. And that's with any company, but we can definitely steer you to or away from some of those troublesome ones. I would say, just off the top of my head, Hilton. Usually, you can't go wrong with a Hilton brand. And that's any class. It doesn't have to be, their top tier properties. It's from their cheapos to the 5 stars. They're usually pretty good, no matter what you're going for.
Yeah. First
we are
of all,
not sponsored.
Right. And before I say the next part, just full disclosure, my wife actually works at a property that's under the Hilton brand. So that's part of the reason for what I'm about to say too. But
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. When I go to hotels, generally I'm staying at a Hampton Inn. And the reason, besides the great price that I get because of that, is that they're always clean, the service is always good, and the breakfast is actually decent. And honestly, you just can't beat them. I've stayed at DoubleTrees. I've stayed at Upper Inn Hilton's. Honestly, I still prefer to be in a Hampton Inn just because the free breakfast is such a huge benefit. And I'm not saying it's the greatest breakfast you're ever going to eat, because it's not. But honestly, if you're traveling like me with 2 kids with you or 4 kids with you and then 2 adults, just having free breakfast basically pays for your hotel room.
Yeah, yeah, especially if you're looking at international travel, because you think about, just off the top of my head, I can think of a couple different properties over in Europe that they would charge anywhere from $35 to $40 per person just to have breakfast included, because they know
Yeah.
that the most travelers don't want to go out and try to find their own breakfast, so they're gonna lop it in with the rest. So, you never know. Sometimes that free breakfast that's included is absolutely worth it.
Yeah, and I will say, if I didn't have, discounted rates that I had access to with Hilton, I would still stay there, or my other choice would be a Courtyard by Marriott, which is basically Marriott's equivalent. I kind of think that Marriott and Hilton are worlds ahead of anybody else in the hotel game, especially when it comes to domestic hotels. Everybody else is just kind of what I'd consider a discount chain. There's exceptions internationally, like Shangri-La is by far one of the best international hotel chains,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
you're going to pay for it too. Their rooms aren't cheap, and uh, they still put on one of the best events I've ever been to, though, as a travel agent. But
Yeah, absolutely. I just from talking to some of their reps and having to deal with them for issues when people are traveling abroad, it's as a U.S. traveler, it's fantastic. They
yeah,
always everyone speaks amazing English for it being a foreign company.
for sure.
I've never had a problem getting a hold of somebody that could understand me. Which is huge, honestly.
Yeah.
When you've been in the industry, or even if you're a frequent traveler, you know how frustrating it can be to be stuck somewhere or have something unforeseen happen, and then you can't find anyone that understands what you're trying to get across. So yeah, definitely agree with the Shangri-La.
And I think that actually brings up another point of a benefit of using a travel agency. A lot of times we do go to these events and meet with different vendors or salespeople for these different airlines and hotels. And although that doesn't really help that much in domestic situations, when you're traveling internationally, that can help a lot, because if you need somebody in the US to make a phone call on your behalf, there's a major time difference a lot of the places that you're traveling. And if we have that direct contact on a business card where we can shoot an email over to somebody that we've personally met, it helps a lot, because we can get things done that may not be able to get done otherwise because of the timing and the time difference.
Yeah, I'm probably going to say it at least once an episode that if anytime I travel internationally, I'm going to have a travel agent or someone like Justin, like a friend that is a travel agent, on standby, just because it's such a headache traveling internationally and being stuck. So
And keep in
um,
mind, like, we're saying that, but neither one of us are we're both in corporate travel. I'm unemployed right now. Andrew's furloughed. It doesn't benefit us that you're using a travel agent, except for keeping the industry still going. But as far
and
as you
protecting
guys,
you.
it's really more about protecting you, because neither one of us do or plan on doing leisure travel and being leisure travel agents. So honestly, it's not going to benefit us at all if you use a travel agent. It's going to protect you guys. And that's why we talk about it, because our goal is to help you guys with travel and make sure that you're taken care of and you're not running into problems. And really, that's the best way to do it.
With that in mind, you can definitely hit me up if you want. If you need me to book a trip for you, I'll shoot some prices your way. It's not even a big deal. I can say that over to you real quick. I know the last episode we were talking about the cruise industry,
Yeah.
and just saw an update on that as well. That there is a ship that's returning to service. It's the second one to return to service since the global shutdown, and it is the MSC Magnifica. And it is going to be initiating a series of 10-day Eastern and Western Mediterranean cruises from Italy. So, interesting, because if you remember, Italy was the first real hotspot after China for the global shutdown. Italy got
Yeah.
absolutely bent over, for lack of a better term, when it came to COVID. they said, a lot of elderly, that kind of thing was causing the numbers to spike. And so to see that they're returning to cruises already, I guess that could be seen as either a very good thing or an extremely irresponsible thing. I'm not sure. I guess only time will tell. It says it's these cruises. They're going to operate 6 cruises before the end of the year, including an 8-day Christmas cruise.
Wow.
It doesn't say anything. I mean, it says the only thing that it says is that the ships are going to be operating at 70% capacity, but we don't know what size ships these are, or the quarters.
So, yeah, we're specifically referring to the Magnifica.
Yep.
Let me pull up some stuff here on the MSC Cruise website.
Okay. While you do that, yeah, it
Um,
looks like they're pretty much giving their blanketed quarantine clause measures, saying that
yeah.
they're doing everything to manage social distancing and cleansing and all that good stuff.
Yeah, the only update I actually see on their website is that they've canceled everything through October 31st, which we already knew that, but
Yep.
then new there you go, 10-night cruise in West and East Mediterranean. Now, the Magnifica, I believe with MSC is actually their largest ship, so it would make sense that they would use that.
To try to regain some of that revenue. Yeah, if they can go 70% on that and have it. I mean, that's kind of this is gonna if it is their biggest, this is gonna be kind of a test for the cruise industry, you would
Yeah,
think, to see if they're because it looks like they the Grandiosa resumed cruising in August.
that's
And
crazy.
that was the first major cruise ship to return to service.
Yeah.
So they've got both
Um
of them now.
Interesting. Yeah, and I see here it's interesting because one page says everything's canceled through the 31st, but then you go to this other page and you see that it left Genoa yesterday with guests on board. So
Yeah, it
conflicting information on their website, but
yeah, it does say that they're doing protected shore excursions now. So I assume that means all guided. So they're
yeah.
probably having to test any of the guides, anybody that they would come in contact with there, because it does say that they're doing all COVID testing on all passengers and crew before boarding. So as long as they're doing that and they're not, becoming lackadaisical. I don't see a problem with it because a lot of people are scared about cruise ships, but it could end up being one of the safest ways that you can travel because if you're testing everybody, nobody's coming in or out. You don't have to worry about cleaning because no one has it. They don't really have
Yeah.
to up their cleaning at all. Whereas an aircraft, you're thinking how many thousands of people potentially go on these flights a day.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that you would have to be concerned about there is if you were like, disembarking at a port for a night or something and you come in contact with somebody in that country that has COVID and then come back on board, you get a false negative test. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
it sounds like those are like the protected shore excursions. It sounds like they're not allowing people to do the kind of on your own thing
yeah,
in different
that's
ports. So maybe it'll be just more. Maybe cruises will be in the future based more on staying on the ship. So maybe there will be different activities on the ship rather than just 18 pools and a casino and all the normal stuff. Maybe this will kind of reinvent the cruise industry instead of doing all these shore excursions.
yeah, it's definitely interesting. And I see here what you're talking about. They have a social bubble for ashore visits.
Oh,
So everybody can get off the ship, but they all have to stay in a bubble, as much similar to a lot of the professional sports teams have been doing.
okay.
Um, so I guess they probably already have predetermined destinations and times at those destinations when they can go that nobody else is going to be there. So it sounds like they're doing everything they can. And I'll be 100% honest, I'm way less familiar with MSC cruises, just because we're talking Mediterranean cruises there. That's just not the
Right. Not our scope.
stereotypical thing you hear about here. Um, but I've heard they're amazing. So, and MSC is kind of the known company when it comes to Mediterranean cruises. So
Yeah, I don't know of any other
yeah,
ones. And
I don't either.
I'm actually curious to see if how Viking Cruises is handling this because that's kind of another one of
Yeah.
those major ones that's more upscale as well as but the problem with that is it's not like a Mediterranean cruise. Those cruises are normally down rivers or
Yeah.
certain places, so a lot of it is getting on and off. So I'm curious to see if how they're handling things.
And let's see. And you see, guys, you can tell this is we are unorganized because as we think about these things, we're both going to websites and pulling up information. But that's a lot of what you guys can do too when you're wanting to travel. Google is your best friend. As far as Viking, I'm not seeing much on their website about anything right now except for Yo-Yo Ma is doing a television appearance for them on October 22nd.
Yeah, I actually, so I'm pretty familiar with the Viking cruises. Because I've always wanted to go on one. They're just so expensive. It's
They
more
are.
of like a retirement kind of cruise normally. Um, but they sent me a cruise book in the mail a couple weeks ago for 2021 and 2022, and it didn't look like they were doing any cruises until summertime of next year. So
Yeah.
maybe they're kind of cutting their losses until they think things are going to calm down.
Yeah, just on their website, if I do river cruises or any cruise in all regions, let me see what the first dates available is. Actually, there is one trip in December, and it's a Pharaohs and Pyramids trip in Cairo.
Yeah, I wanted to do that one really bad.
But dear Lord, you were right about it being expensive. $6,500 per person.
Yeah, it's definitely if you love cruises, that is something that you should look into. Those are very I know their ships are a lot smaller, so way
Yeah.
less passengers, which is why it's more expensive. It's usually most of their every one of their ships is kind of got a unique like flavor to it. One of them that I was seeing, it has its own study with its own rotating library, so it'll
That's
change
cool.
based on where you're going. So if you're traveling through Egypt, it'll have books on the pyramids or pharaohs, that kind of thing. Whereas if you're going through Paris, if you're going through France, it'll have just tons of books on vineyards and different wineries. It's very interesting. It's one of those services that you can tell they put a lot of their value into their customer service.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely an interesting thing. I've heard a little bit about it, but I haven't really looked into it that much just because I know I can't afford it. But yeah, they definitely look fun. And I think that'll just lead us into something else as far as international stuff, because I just found an article of something that just happened as well. Um, Earlier this March, there was an airline called Flybe, and what Flybe was is basically a discount airline, kind of similar to like Ryanair. Uh, I hate to say Spirit because even Ryanair is a higher class than Spirit. But they went out of business in March, right as COVID-19 was kind of starting. And it looks like as of now, there's new investors involved. And it looks like Flybe's going to be back in early 2021.
Oh yeah, I just saw that. Yeah, it looks like they pretty much went belly up right at the beginning of the pandemic,
Yeah,
and which is not surprising because it was one of the newer airlines that was a budget airline, so they didn't have the capital available to handle a pandemic. I mean, if you look at
right.
the big airlines, they're barely hanging on. So you think about all the smaller ones that pretty much couldn't do anything.
Yeah, and I think this is a great thing for the travel industry that somebody's stepping in. It looks like it's a hedge fund that was kind of behind helping the Virgin. What was it? It was one of Virgin's smaller carriers that they owned in a
I
while. They tried to help save them.
Yeah, I was trying to think of I can't remember what the version the one that they originally had. It looks like this one's going to be rebranded as Virgin Connect.
Yeah, and that that's interesting. And reading through these things, some people say they plan to rebrand as Virgin Connect. There's actually another article that says they don't plan to use the Virgin name, so I can't. We'll see what
Honestly,
happens next year.
I I would be surprised if they didn't use the Virgin name because Virgin has been like amazing forever. If you think
Yeah,
about it, the that was they had a lot of really really good press around their CEO at the time before he sold or stepped down, however that ended up happening.
Yeah.
But I've heard nothing but good things about Virgin, Virgin Atlantic, and I've never had any issues on a professional level dealing with them either. So I would be very surprised
Yeah.
if they tried to, keep something, or if they didn't try to use that name.
The only thing I can think of is, Virgin Atlantic obviously still a major carrier, a recognizable name. Here in America, Virgin America was purchased by Alaska, I believe it was, a couple of years ago, and you don't see the name here as much. So maybe, but Flybe, you're talking about a regional airline in the UK, so you're not going to have flights into the US. So
Hmm.
yeah, I really don't know why they wouldn't use it unless Richard Branson did something that makes people not like the name over there. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. That was I know that he was very well known for taking care of his employees, which kind of that was a trickle down effect where the employees then cared about, you
Yeah.
as the traveler. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see a lot of what happens with these regional carriers internationally.
Yeah, especially internationally. As far as here in the U.S., I know a lot have already gone under this year, and even ones that weren't planned to go under. Now, some like Trans States wasn't expected to go under, but they did. Uh, I can't even think of some of the names. Is it PSA that went under as well? I think they planned to stop service late this year, but ended up going under early in the year.
Yeah, I
It's
haven't heard
hard to keep
anything about
track.
them in a while. Yeah, it's honestly been a whirlwind this year trying to keep up with who's still flying or who's still even in business. It's
Yeah,
been absolutely crazy.
it's not PSA because it says they're still operating, but PSA actually has one of the bigger challenges, and this is something that a lot of people don't know. Yes, PSA is a regional carrier that operates American Airlines smaller regional jet flights. However, there's also Envoy Air. What a lot of people don't realize is Envoy Air, although a regional carrier, is actually just a subsidiary of American Airlines. So, right now, in a situation like this where Americans cut their flights, they're gonna let their own carrier that they own operate those flights. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to PSA because I can't imagine they're doing very much business.
No, no, that's I actually have a good friend of mine who is a flight attendant, and I believe she was kind of stuck on those more regional carriers because they handle
Mhm.
all that with seniority. And I know that she was out of work for a little bit, but she had been furloughed. Uh, Luckily, she is not with one of the companies that was just laying people off during this time, but she's back to work now. I'll have to check with her and see um, if she's noticed a huge decline in those regional carriers, if they're kind of doing more of like the bigger jets, even for smaller, those shorter flights, just because it's more cost effective than trying to use one of their third party regional carriers. I'd be
Yeah.
very curious to see that.
Yeah, I would too. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about with regional carriers, a lot of times you're flying on them and just don't realize it. In the industry, we refer to them as code share flights. And as a travel agent and any website you go on, they're required to put on there that you're flying on the regional carrier. But your staff and everything, your flight attendants are going to be wearing the big airlines uniform and things like that. So you wouldn't even know. But Republic is one of the largest, and they actually fly for United, Delta, and American. So that's one. Chances are you've flown on Republic Airlines at some point and you just don't know it.
Yeah, and just to kind of go a little bit further on that for the people that may be listening that aren't as travel savvy as some others, if you are one of those people that just goes to Google Flights and you just grab what you need, you how you see it is that it's going to say that it is on your under the flight. It'll show um, something along the lines of so and so, like in this situation it'll say PSA Airlines, and then it'll say like flying as or acting on behalf of or flying on behalf of American Airlines. So that's anytime you see some kind of verbiage that says as American Airlines or as Delta or as United, that means that you're on a regional carrier. It's going to be a smaller aircraft, um, and that's probably older. Usually, the regional that you're not going to
Yeah.
find a new regional aircraft too often. But I just wanted to add that so that people know when they're booking their own flights what to kind of look for on there, because it just I was looking at flights for my sister the other day, and I noticed that on Google Flights they really it's if you're not savvy, you can really book some wrong stuff.
Yeah.
I looked up, it was just there's a wedding that she's got to go to, and it's in I had them flying into North Carolina and just out of Detroit, and they had the number one option on Google Flights had a 17-hour travel time. If you're not looking at the travel time, you're just booking at the lowest. You're gonna have well, congratulations, you now have a overnight in Charlotte for no reason, because that's not where you're going.
Yeah.
Um, and then you like scroll down, and just for $20 more, you've got a 4-hour travel time. So really, like you just really want to be careful, because even as a travel agent, that's something that when you're using any kind of service that you're not familiar with, you want to make sure that you're not, screwing yourself, especially if it comes to international. I would never suggest anyone that is not a travel agent to try booking international on Google Flights. One of my closest
No.
friends, she was trying to come home at the very beginning of the pandemic, and she ended up getting like hung out to dry by Google, because it's all considered third party that you go through.
Right.
And I had to basically act as her travel agent, while I was making calls on her behalf, trying to get her to where she needed to go, because they had started canceling flights, but nothing was being updated. It was a mess, if anybody remembers at the
Yeah.
beginning of this. And so she's trying to get home before they closed the borders, because this is when the US only had a couple destinations that you could fly into. And last I checked, which was a couple weeks ago, she was still waiting for her refund, because when she got to the airport, they flew her into Korea, but there were no flights leaving Korea.
That's a
So
problem.
she ended up having to buy a ticket at the counter at full price for a one way, which
That's
was
nuts.
over $1,000 when her whole ticket didn't even cost that much. So she's still trying to get reimbursed for that, and that was because she didn't go through a travel agency, and just booked it herself on Google Flights, which it's hard to compare a pandemic situation towards a normal situation, because that's about worst case scenario, but
Yeah.
it's just kind of furthering the point.
Um, I think to even further that, first of all, Google Flights. If you're going to use a service online, please use something other than Google Flights. It's just way inferior to even like Expedia. But I want to go ahead and see. Now, this isn't going to be great for those of you that are listening on Anchor, but I'm going to share my screen for those of you that are listening or watching on YouTube, because I just want to give you an example of what we were talking about here a second ago. And what that is right. Let me see if I can make this bigger.
It was
There
bigger
we
for
go. Okay, so if you can see this, if you look at right here, this is a round trip flight from St. Louis to Denver. First of all, $92 round trip makes me really want to fly right now, but I don't want to fly right now. I love Denver. That's an insane price. And actually, if I took Frontier, I could go 77. And since I don't care about assigning my seat and I travel with a backpack instead of a carry on, that's $77. Like, that's less than a hotel stay locally. Anyway, if you look at this United flight here, it says United 5380 operated by SkyWest doing business as United Express. So that's just an example of how those code shares are going to look. That's the United name and flight number. SkyWest is the actual name of the regional carrier. And then United Express is actually what's going to be painted on the side of that aircraft. So I just wanted to pull that up so you guys could kind of see an example of what a code share looks like. All right. Andrew,
So
you're tiny now. I don't know how to fix the screen. Sorry.
that's right. You're still. We're both still normal on my screen after you closed that other window.
Okay.
Let's see. So, switching gears a little bit to the hotel industry. I know that we touched
Yeah.
on just a little bit, but a lot of people probably aren't too aware of IHG, so Intercontinental Hotels Group, and Marriott. Everybody pretty much knows Marriott, whether you travel or not.
Yeah.
Sonesta, though, is a brand that I have not actually really paid attention to until recently.
Not much
Um,
either.
so they're looking at one of the biggest hotel brand grows in a very long time. It says they're uh, they're estimating that the U.S. scale up is going to be increasing the brand by over 300%. So 325% growth is what they're thinking of for 2020. So for everything to be going on, and then this company growing that much this year, I was curious, so I dug a little bit more into it. It says that because they've recently added more than 200 former IHG and Marriott International hotels to its fold,
Okay.
they're attaining some of that prominence in the hotel industry. So they're thinking by next year, um, Sonesta might be more of like a household name like Marriott, Hilton. So
Wow.
interesting to kind of see that much growth happening. I don't know if that you should necessarily consider it growth though, because they've kind of
Yeah.
just purchased properties. It's more like, are they buying failing properties? Is everybody
They,
selling out because there's nobody traveling?
well,
Um,
that's interesting that you bring that up because there was actually another article that I read this morning that the US is seeing the largest amount of hotel construction that they've ever seen right now. So all those major brands are actually also building new properties, including I can think of now. I live near Chesterfield, Missouri, and it's actually they have the most hotels of any city in Missouri, and they're actually building like 6 new hotels, and they're all under either a Hampton or Marriott brand. Now that I think about it, or a Hilton or Marriott brand,
Now that
so
that confuses me. I don't know why they would, because as everybody knows, nobody's really traveling. The only thing I can think of is that they're justifying this by thinking that there's going to be more domestic traveling, like by car, or that people are, going stir crazy, and then they want to, just even get out of their house to go to a hotel. I don't know.
yeah.
I can't see the justification with how many people have lost their jobs in the hotel industry to justify all these new properties.
So a lot of the ones that are being built, at least around here, were already on plans for construction this year anyway. And the reason they're being built is because there wasn't enough hotel space prior to all of this. So I think the hope is just that when the industry rebounds, at least they'll have those properties there and be able to bring in more money to make up for the money that they've lost this year. That's really the only thing that makes sense to me. But you brought up Sonesta, and I had to look it up. Now, I've heard Sonesta's name before. I've booked their hotels before, but I couldn't think of one that I've actually seen in person here in the St. Louis metro area. And there's only three. Two of them are extended stay hotels that I actually know are both formerly Hilton properties. I've stayed at one of them. It was kind of a dilapidated Hilton property, but I think they renovated it. And then the Chase Park Plaza, which is a very famous historical hotel here in St. Louis. They were actually the company that came in and renovated it and reopened it. So, but in all of St. Louis, there's probably hundreds of properties under other brand names, but Sonesta only has those three. So it'll be interesting to see their growth here over the next few years as well.
Yeah, I wonder if some of these properties that maybe even are local, it'll be interesting to see if any of those are ones that were purchased, and just see if their name changes or anything, or if they just keep kind of the branding the same.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what kind of changes they'll make to the properties that were purchased, because it's over 200 properties. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, looking at this Sonesta in the Westport Plaza area here in St. Louis, it definitely looks like they went in and did some renovations. It looks nice, but it definitely looks like they are lower end renovations. So my guess is they're trying to be kind of a budget brand, and that actually at this point in time when people have less money, being a more budget friendly brand might be beneficial to them.
Yeah, especially if they're trying to recoup some of that capital that was lost this year, from just everything being shut down.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you mentioned IHG. For anybody that's listening that doesn't know what IHG is, that is Holiday Inn, Intercontinental, Crown Plaza. I think that's about it. There's some other brands under there too,
Those are
but
the
those are their
major ones.
major ones.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if there's anything updated on the car rental companies, because I remember hearing earlier in this year about Hertz going through bankruptcy, which is not surprising at all because they ended up
No.
basically purchasing a fleet late last year. Like they were upgrading their fleet, which people were I shouldn't say people, I should say shareholders were already confused about, because they were reporting losses, and then for them to be doing this, a lot of it just seemed very shady.
Well, they
Um,
are the United of car rental companies.
yeah, it just this I found something that was updated just a couple days ago that Hertz they're still going through bankruptcy,
I see that.
um, but their stock is up 128%, and people are very confused as to why that's happening. Um,
I can answer that actually. Hold on one second for this to learn. Bankrupt car rental firm Hertz gets $1.65 billion lifeline, sends stock soaring.
yep. So they basically, if you think about what happened when the small business loans and that kind of stuff was pushed through earlier in the year to help out the U.S. economy, um, to kind of keep it afloat, where
Yeah.
they pumped that money into Wall Street to try to keep the market from just exploding on itself. Think of it the same way as that, of what they're doing for the car companies. And I haven't heard of anything for the airlines bailout wise, other than just the normal what came through. I believe it was part of the Heroes package in the begin the first one, um, the first time it passed. But I don't think anything is. I don't think they've directly bailed out any of the airlines at this point.
Yeah, and that's definitely something, for those of you who are interested in travel and just watching what's going on in the industry, obviously today, political talk, but we got to go there if we're going to talk about this, and that is the stimulus bill that Nancy Pelosi and Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, are negotiating. It's expected to include $25 to $28 billion in airline aid, so that could make a huge difference in the employment numbers that we're seeing in the travel industry. So it'll be interesting to watch that. This is kind of the last chance that there could be a deal like that before the election. And to be honest, in America, nothing tends to get done in that lame duck session in November, December before the next presidency takes effect, whether it's the same president or not.
Yeah, they
So,
want to kind of hold it until elections, which
yeah,
is like he's saying, it's nothing new for us in the States here, but just a little bit frustrating, I guess, for anybody on either side of it, because people are tired of these politicians kind of holding the people's money hostage. And like Justin said, on both sides, it's
yeah.
that both sides are so stubborn that they don't want, they don't want to, that if they're using that as one of their major campaigning points, they don't want to give that up until after elections are done. So we'll see. And like you were saying as well, try to stay out of politics as much as we can here. But unfortunately, with everything that's going on, politics is almost in everything, and that's a huge part in travel right now, because a lot of people in the travel industry are kind of looking to the government for some guidance on, this is what you're here for, is what are we supposed to be doing? This is, if you don't want anyone in the travel industry to be working, then what are you going to do when people start traveling again? Or people want to travel again, and you look at how much tourism affects the US and a lot of international countries. And if you don't have anybody working in tourism, you're looking at, in Michigan itself, tourism is huge for Michigan. That's one of their biggest
Yeah.
income. So, I mean, you think when a lot of people think of Michigan, you think of kind of the auto industry, which is obviously kind of one of the biggest things. But tourism is another one. That's the whole Pure Michigan slogan that's literally like all tourism based, because they want people to kind of go up to northern Michigan and see everything that it has to offer. So when you cut out tourism, you're cutting out a major lifeline for a lot of states.
Yeah, I think that kind of plays to a lot of the states. I mean, obviously, states like California and Florida are heavily, influenced by tourism, but any state in the Midwest, all the way north up to the Canadian border, and all the way down to the south, just heavy amounts of tourism. If nothing else, especially this time of year, because of the fall colors, and kind of the milder weather than some of the northern states, you may see people come down to Missouri. A lot of people road trip from the north down to the south to try to beat everything in the winter and see all the colors and stuff like that. So it affects everybody. And unfortunately, that travel money ends up affecting the money that the state's bringing in taxes and things like that too. So it's really a trickle down effect where it hurts everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't think of anything else really that has been going on major. I think we kind of touched on everything that was very new here within the past week or so, kind of correlating it to what has been going on through the year, and kind of a couple updates on those different bankruptcies and new routes and things like that.
Yeah, I don't think there's really anything else right now either that's come out. My hope is that by next week we'll kind of have some clarity on the future of what it's going to look like for especially domestic airlines here in the States. Uh, a lot of it's based, unfortunately, on the stimulus and what our government's willing to do to help them out. Because without that, these layoffs that have come into effect are going to stay permanent, and you're probably going to see more routes being cut. So it's not a great time for travel in the world, but it's definitely a time to stay informed if you're one that wants to travel, to make sure that you know all the precautions that are being put in place and where it's safe to go. And on top of that, just knowing what you're allowed to do when you get there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so Justin knows that I love New Zealand with all my heart, and I just got something here that it's a little bit dated news, but it's the first I've heard of it. Is that New Zealand and Australia to New Zealand is actually going to be doing a travel bubble.
Oh.
But as of right now, it's only one way.
Oh.
So they're saying it's supposed to be. This was let's see here. This was early October, and it said in the next couple weeks, the flights were supposed to be beginning. The catch is that the quarantine-free travel will only be one way from New Zealand to Australia, and a limited number of destinations will be included in the deal. So something to keep in mind, that we haven't really touched on because I haven't heard too much about it. But look at these other countries that might be doing travel bubbles. I think those might be the next. That might honestly be the next way to travel internationally. Is if they do these travel bubbles, it might be the safest way to go where you want to go and still see the things that you want to see without having to do these ridiculous 14-day quarantines. If you
Yeah.
if you're able to do a test before you leave or when you arrive, and then not having to do the quarantine and just being able to have your vacation, I think that would open up a lot more people back into traveling. I think that's just um it's a very interesting take on travel that this is the first I've seen of. So
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. And one other thing, actually, you mentioned New Zealand, and I remembered an article that I had read that I totally forgot about until just now. So, Air New Zealand, a while back, had a program called Mystery Breaks. And what it was you'd pay a flat rate for an entire vacation package. So, you would pay one rate and you'd get a flight, hotel, car for a certain amount of time, but you wouldn't know where you were going to stay. You wouldn't know where you were going to get your car from. Basically, it's a mystery. Well, they have actually just brought that back. So for 599 Australian dollars, which is 422 in the US, you can choose either Great, Deluxe, or Luxury. And with those programs, what you are guaranteed is a flight on Air New Zealand, accommodations in a core hotel, which is another pretty dang good international brand in my opinion,
mhm.
and a car from Avis, which is actually kind of at the top of the list for me when it comes to car rental companies. And you'll get to stay. You won't know how long you're going to be there. You won't know what city you're necessarily going to. And you're obviously going to choose where you're departing from. But yeah, $422, and you won't know the place that you're going to go to. So that's definitely
Actually,
different.
that sounds actually amazing,
It
especially
does.
if you're just looking to get out for a while. Let's put a link to that in the YouTube video for people. That way they
Okay.
can they can go check it out. Obviously, we're not affiliated by that, but that actually sounds like something I myself would enjoy doing. So that'd be another really cool thing to see more airlines kind of partner with these countries to do, is these getaways. I think this, even if it's maybe combine that with one of these travel bubbles.
Yeah, and it kind of looks like it is, because from what I'm understanding, you have to be taking off from New Zealand, and it will be within a couple of Australian states that you'd be traveling to. So there's definitely cheap flights to get over to New Zealand or Australia right now, because there's cheap flights to get just about anywhere at the moment, to be honest.
Yeah, depending on, you just got to look for them.
Yeah, but New Zealand's been one of the best countries when it comes to containing coronavirus within the borders. Residents have been unable to travel anywhere outside the country except for a few of the Australian states. So it'll definitely be interesting. And with these mystery breaks, you do not have to quarantine or go through any other security measures when you return from the trip.
So yeah, these must be just it must just be another way to say travel bubble, is what it sounds like.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see if more countries are willing to do that. Which, if you're a U.S. traveler, you're still going to want to look into those restrictions, even if you look at this deal, because it may be something that is, you're only allowed to do it if you're a certain nationality coming from a certain place. But it's always something it's just another one of those things to look into.
Yeah, I'll definitely put the link on the video on YouTube, and I'll put the link in the description on Anchor as well. It looks like you can either book the mystery break, which you get to choose from 2 nights or 3 nights, and then those 3 different levels, and you would share a twin or double bed, I guess. But on top of that, you can actually book an open dated voucher for the same thing.
Oh wow, that's fantastic, because if you're worried about traveling right now, you can still have that voucher to use until whatever the expiration date is on that. So you can actually kind of, if life happens, or if you're just not real comfortable with traveling at the time that you thought you were going to be going, or that you thought you wanted to go, maybe you get it next week, and then in a month you see, oh geez, this is, maybe I don't want to travel there. That'd be something to look into.
Yeah, and looking at it, open dated vouchers are valid for travel within 12 months. So you have a full year to use that voucher.
Yeah, so absolutely. That's something that I will personally be looking into myself. Just going stir crazy, probably like the rest of everybody else. But as someone who is addicted to travel, maybe a little bit more so. But no, that was a great little last tidbit. I would say that's probably the best unknown destination.
That was cheesy, but good.
I think that's a good way to cut it out here. I think that's a good way to send it out. That was a good ending for the our unknown destination. We kind of got there one way or another.
Yeah, I agree. I want to thank you guys for listening. Again, you can always listen to the podcast on Anchor. You can actually go ahead and subscribe there, or leave us messages that we can listen to, play back, and answer on future podcasts. On top of that, we're available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, basically anywhere you listen, and at YouTube under the name Unknown Destination. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right, have a good one.